I remember I was 5 years old, and I was in my grandmother's home in Amman, Jordan, in the Middle East. And it was my birthday. We were baking for my birthday. I was so excited being in that kitchen. Everything looked old in that kitchen. The oven looked old. The radio, black old radio on the window that was playing Arabic songs that were all about love and affection and passion. And I watched my grandmother as she was mixing a dough. I watched her put together the flour with some yeast, with a pinch of salt and some oil, and she started kneading the dough. I was fascinated as I observed that the more she gave it time, it started rising higher and higher. And she realized that I was fascinated by the whole process, and she told me that the more you knead the dough, the more you make it smaller, it would rise again, even higher. And she would say, because it has the wild element within. And of course, I didn't understand what that meant, kneading the dough, making it smaller, pushing it down, rising. But to me, all I wanted was to get a little piece of that dough so I can make small heart-shaped pastries and bake it and then eat them when they're done with so much pride. 15 years later, I was in another kitchen. I was in San Diego, California, sitting next to a man. We were newlywed, and we just got married a week before and moved from Jordan to San Diego together. I was looking at him with so much admiration. He was like Prince Charming in Jordan. Everybody wanted to have him marry their daughter. And I felt very proud that he chose me to be his wife. And I asked him, I said, why me? Why did you marry me? And he said, because you're like dough. I can shape you the way I want. I didn't want a woman in her mid-20s who already has education and has personality and identity. I wanted you so I can teach you to see the world the way I do. So I didn't get the love confession I was hoping for. But I was not shocked, because that's how I was raised to believe that I need to be shaped by the culture, by the community, by my family, and now by the husband. When I think about my grandmother and my mom and my aunts, in reality, they were like dough. They were shaped. They didn't have their own identity. They had to follow and obey and deal with the expectations that the community and the family imposed on them. So again, I was not shocked, and he did not lie, because that was the dynamic of our relationship, where I was trying to grow. Imagine I was 20, trying to discover who I am, trying to grow, and then he would push me again down. And even simple things that we take for granted, I was not allowed to do. I was not allowed to have friends, or leave our home without permission, or even talk to my mom more than 15 minutes a week. And I continued to live with that life, because the problem with that life was not just that I was being pushed down. The problem, I started believing that I am small. I started, even when he's not pushing me down, I was doing a pretty good job at it and kept pushing myself down and thinking that I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, that I don't deserve to grow. And that lasted for about 5 years. So imagine being 25 years old, I felt that my life was over. There was nothing to live for, and I was getting into such deep depression. And then one day, I heard the voice of my grandmother in my head, in my intuition. So my grandmother passed away when I was 7 years old, so 2 years after the experience of baking. But the influence that she had on my life was so powerful that continues to live with me even to today. And her voice kept repeating in my mind that the more you knead the dough, the more you make it smaller, the more you push it down, it will eventually rise again. And that's when I understood what she said about the wild element within. And that is, I have the power within to rise and to rise again and to rise higher. And it was at that time, it was time for me to rise. But of course, whenever we take big risk like this, and me rising, that meant that I had to leave that abusive marriage. Whenever we take something like this, there's consequences. And in my situation, I did pack and I did leave, and I had the trust in my heart that I have what it takes in order to rise, even though I was so horrified and scared. The consequences in my life was that I live in a community that's extremely traditional, and the woman is not allowed to live a life other than what was expected of her early on. As if my life was pre-planned on my behalf, and it was similar to the life of my mom and my grandmother, and I was supposed to continue the cycle, but I broke the cycle by leaving that marriage. And I was horrified not just by not being able to survive financially, and I was in very deep depression at that time, but the other horror was that my entire family, everybody, almost everybody, disowned me, but one decided to have me killed. And that one is my father. So in my small community, if a woman does something not accepted by her family, they would just kill her. And it's called honor killing, and they believe that they bring the honor back to the family. So I've been living with this now for 20 years. And of course, I learned a lot of lessons throughout the journey, as painful as it is and has been, related to the death threats and related to the external forces that constantly keep trying to push me down, whether it is the family's beliefs and what they think are their values, but also the media, the expectations of women, all of the things that I had to live with. But I learned how powerful I am, and the inner wild element within that my grandmother told me about, and how when I'm activating it, I have the power to rise again and again. So the lessons that I want to share with you from this story, and it's very important to share this message with you, because as I'm working with so many women from around the world, they are living with these knuckles that put them down. It could be a relationship, it could be a family, it could be the community, the media that keep pushing women down. And in order for us to advance, we need to discover our wild element within. We need to discover the inner power that help us to rise and to realize that we are able to do that. So that's why I'm sharing this with you. The first lesson that I want you to leave with is to rise. And now whenever I think about the story with my ex-husband, when he compared me to the dough, I am very proud to be like a dough. Not because I can be pushed down, but because I know that with every time I'm being pushed down, I have the power to rise and rise higher. And of course, just like a dough, it requires specific ingredients like the flour and the yeast and the oil and little of salt. The same thing with all of us. We need our own ingredients to activate the wild element within. And each one of us, these ingredients are very different. I'll share with you my ingredients. It is surrounding myself with people that believe in me and want to see me grow and want to see me rise. I am so picky about who I bring into my network and who I spend time with, because of course there's a lot of wonderful people there, but there are people that are not as great, and I make sure not to make time for them. So surrounding myself with people that want to see me rise. The second one is investing in myself. I don't wait for anybody to invest in me. I learn to invest in myself. whether it is taking a course, whether it is buying the right book, whether it is investing time listening to a podcast. It's so important to not wait for an approval of somebody out there for us to continue to educate ourselves and continue to grow, and instead to invest in ourselves. And also to realize that sometimes we were told things that are not accurate, so we need to question the norm, question the assumptions that were told about us and were fed about us. Some of the assumptions that women need to stay small, or if you rise, you're going to be perceived as a negative way, or you're going to be seen, you're not supposed to speak up, you're not supposed to do certain things. We need to question all of this, because whatever happened in the past doesn't apply in our life right now, and it's not going to inspire us to help the next generation to have even a better life and to rise higher and higher. And we need to realize also that we have a choice in everything that we do. We can choose to stay small, we can choose to be the people pushing ourselves down, or we can choose to challenge the norm and continue to rise higher and higher. And as we're doing all of this and thinking about the dough and the rise, we need to recognize that the path is not going to be easy. There's always going to be something out there that will push us down. And I'm sharing this with you realistically for all of us to expect that there will be resistance. Some are more horrible than others, but we will face resistance, and it is our responsibility to do something about it, to not be discouraged, not to be okay of staying small, and instead to challenge the norm, to accept this resistance, and to do something about it. And then to rise higher. As I'm working with people from all around the world, I realize specifically women, they tell me about they're not comfortable in speaking up because something happened when they were a child and the coach put them down, and as a result, they learned to stay quiet all their life. Or something happened again in their childhood or when they're a teenager, and it got stuck with them. The problem is that memory, whether it is abuse, whether it is somebody putting us down, whether it is illness, many times, and I realize it every day, it is stopping so many of us of rising higher and higher, as if it becomes the knuckles that keep pushing us down. The memory stays with us and it doesn't help us. And that was my experience in my life as well, where after I left that marriage and I had to deal with so much death threats and all of the horror that I had to experience as a 25 years old, I decided to block it all and just focus on work. I decided to just work very hard, work day and night, work on the weekends, work, because of course I enjoyed what I was doing, but also I was running away from reality. I was hiding it and wanting to just escape. But the problem was, 7 years later, I got very, very sick and ended in the hospital. And some of you may think, oh, as if she needs another horrible thing in her life. It was a blessing because it forced me for the first time to not work and truly pause and reflect about my life. And it was for the first time ever, I realized that what I truly need to do is to start by forgiveness, forgiving myself, forgiving my father, forgiving my ex-husband, forgiving everybody who hurt me. And as I was going through the journey, I was surprised to realize its positive effect. The more I was healing myself, the more I started feeling comfortable of speaking up. The more I was healing myself, the less I was intimidated by working with authority figures, the more I started feeling happy about who I am and more confident. And that is a message I want to leave you with. We all have a story. We all have a journey. And each one of us, we have something in our life currently or in the past that somehow continues to live with us and continues to make us bad and continues to push us down. And it's time to address it. It's time to heal it. It's time to forgive others and forgive ourselves, because that's when we're able to free ourselves, and that's when we rise higher and higher, and that will activate the wild element within, and we're just so worth it. So some things to keep in your mind, to continue to dig deep. And we spent time talking about it today, digging deep, understanding who you are, whether it is your brand, but also digging deep with the hurt you've experienced in the past and doing something about it, addressing it, healing it, because that is just so powerful. Remember that it takes time. So just like I know from myself, I am not patient. I want everything to happen right now. But just like the dough, it's not going to be like this and become big in a second. It requires growth. It requires time. So we need to be patient with ourselves. Observe our internal monologue. What are we telling ourselves? Are we the ones pushing ourselves down where we don't need somebody to push us because we're doing a good job at it? But it's a matter of observing what are we telling ourselves and what can we do in order to be more kind to ourselves. Question the norm. Question everything. Whatever happened thousands of years ago of how they treated women at that time, it doesn't apply to us. But the problem, the stories and the expectations keep going from one generation to another, and it is our time to challenge it for ourselves and for the next generation. Invest in yourself, and I told you that earlier. Invest in yourself. I have a friend who belongs, like she wants to be part of this event today, and she told me she's going to ask HR to approve it. And I texted her yesterday and I said, oh, I'm speaking tomorrow. I'm excited to see you virtually, because she was supposed to be virtual. And she responded and she said, HR never responded back to me. I can't make it. Don't wait for HR to respond. Invest in yourself. Ensure that you are making the investment in order to get the resources and the amazing network and the education that you deserve. Set small goals. We tend to overwhelm ourselves with these humongous big goals, and the bigger they are, the more horrifying they appear. So set small little goals. Focus on achieving these goals. Observe the fears and insecurities that show up. Ask for help from your network and continue to find another small goal. Even like when we talked about all the branding, some of you may feel this is so overwhelming and big. Small little goals. Think about what can you do, small little thing every week for half an hour, and then by the end of the year or in a year, you're going to achieve so much. Surround yourself with positive people. So think about the wonderful people in your life that you want to spend more time with. Think about your mentors and how you can make more time in order to interact with a mentor or with your mentee. But at the same time, think about the people that are toxic in your life. I'm not saying go scream at them. I'm just saying don't make time for them. Celebrate even the tiniest accomplishments. So every time you rise, celebrate it, because it's so powerful. And the higher you rise, celebrate it again and again. And heal and forgive. And that is so powerful, because that's when we can rise higher. And all of these past memories, we need to have them stop pushing us lower and lower. And set boundaries. Absolutely. We need to learn how to say no and set boundaries. Be intentional in making time for you, whether it is what we heard earlier, walking for 10 minutes, or making time to reflect on your journey, your career, what you want, what are you passionate about. And remember that you have the wild element within. And just like I hear it and I love it, that the baker's dozen is actually 13, not 12. So the 13th one I want to share with you is be the starter dough for other people. Help other people grow, help other women grow, because first they're going to be inspired by your journey, but also they're going to grow by the mentorship and the help that you are giving them. So this is my grandmother, and the more the dough is kneaded, pushed down, and made smaller, it will eventually rise again, even higher. And I want you to remember, as we are finishing this section, that you are unstoppable, because you have the wild element within. And it is our choice, all of us, to find the right ingredients so we can continue to rise.